This video is brought to you by Ground News. The history of Japan-China relations is a turbulent story, with periods of relative friendliness being replaced by periods of hostility, in a repeating cycle that's gone on for decades. The past few years have seen that relationship deteriorate as China more aggressively asserts its disputed territorial claims, Japan hikes its defense spending, and issues from visas to seafood inflame tensions. However, in just the past few months, there's been a noticeable effort to rebuild the relationship. So, in this video, we're going to explain why Japan-China relations have been struggling, why Japan is seeking to warm the relationship up again, and why it won't be easy to maintain. Who's the worst politician right now? Here are thoughts and argue with us on our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. The recent downturn in Japan-China relations has several reasons. One of these was Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's ongoing support for Vladimir Putin's regime. In 2022, alluding to potential future Chinese military action, Japan's then Prime Minister Fumio Kishida warned that Ukraine today might be the East Asia of tomorrow, and his government kick-started a major military build-up, strengthened Japan's partnership with the United States and other US allies in the region like South Korea and the Philippines, with a view of countering China. Another longer-running source of tension between the two countries is the dispute over the Senkaku Islands, located in the East China Sea, controlled and administered by Japan, but claimed by China, which refers to them as the Diaoyu Islands. If you're interested, we made a video on the dispute years ago. But the TLDR is that the uninhabited islands are in a strategically significant location, near Japan, China and Taiwan, close to important shipping lanes and oil and gas reserves. China has frequently asserted its claim by dispatching Coast Guard ships and other vessels to the waters around the islands. In fact, 2024 was the third consecutive year that a record was set for the number of days that Chinese government vessels were spotted in the Senkaku Islands contiguous zone. China has also at times placed so-called hydrometeorological buoys within Japan's exclusive economic zone near the islands, prompting condemnation from Japan. The difficult relations have not just been based on territorial or military issues, though. In 2023, China imposed a blanket ban, which it eventually lifted, on the import of Japanese seafood, after Japan, with approval from the International Atomic Energy Agency, began releasing treated water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean. The two countries have also been at odds over visa reciprocity, and in 2024, Japan's foreign minister demanded China crack down on, quote, groundless, malicious and anti-Japanese sentiment, particularly on social media, after the fatal stabbing of a Japanese child in China. Now, it's worth pointing out that before more recent events, there have been nominal efforts to warm relations, with both sides agreeing on their desire for a mutually beneficial relationship based on common strategic interests, and building constructive and stable Japan-China relations. Some progress was indeed made under Kishida. Towards the end of his time as Prime Minister, China began to ease its ban on Japanese seafood, for example. However, in recent months, two things have provided fresh impetus for Japan and China to improve their ties. The first was Kishida's resignation and subsequent replacement as Japanese Prime Minister by Shigeru Ishiba, and the second was the return of Donald Trump to the US presidency. Now, we'll get on to why these things portended an effort to improve Japan-China ties in a moment, but first we'll take a look at the things that have happened in recent months to actually improve the relationship. In November, a month and a half after becoming Japanese Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba had a face-to-face meeting with China's President Xi Jinping during a summit in Peru, where the two leaders affirmed that they would promote the two countries' mutually beneficial relationship. Japan's Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya subsequently visited China and announced that Japan would implement visa loosening measures for Chinese nationals, in reciprocation of a move by China to resume visa waivers for Japanese nationals. The two countries also restarted the Japan-China ruling party Exchange Council for the first time in 6 years, with a delegation from Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party visiting China in mid-January. There's talk of China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi visiting Japan this month, as well as a possible visit to China by Prime Minister Ishiba in May. It was also announced this month that one of China's contentious buoys had been removed from Japanese waters, although others remain in place. So let's look at why Japan is mending its relations with China. As previously mentioned, a lot of this is a result of Shigeru Ishiba becoming Japanese Prime Minister. If you know anything about Ishiba's political background, it might not come as a surprise. After all, it was Ishiba's political mentor who normalized relations within the People's Republic of China in the 1970s. Of all the candidates for the LDP leadership to replace Kishida last year, it was Ishiba who was effectively the most moderate on China. He's spoken about the need to improve ties with China, to cooperate in necessary areas, pursue realist diplomacy, and ensure China's stable development benefits the entire region. Some observers have noted that Ishiba is more overtly pursuing the so-called double hedge strategy in Japan's foreign policy. That is, maintaining the strategically important partnership with the United States, which forms a key part of Japan's and the region's security, while also keeping relations warm with China, Japan's largest trade partner and one of the largest investment destinations for Japanese companies. The return of Donald Trump, as we mentioned earlier, is also likely a driver of China seeking warmer ties with Japan, because China's ongoing economic slowdown and the spectre of new Trump tariffs boosts the importance of China's economic relationship with Japan. But also because driving any kind of wedge between the US and its ally Japan can only be a good thing for Beijing, especially as the past few years under Biden saw the hardening of the US-Japan-South Korea anti-China alliance. Concurrently, Trump's return may also provide greater justification for Japan to seek warmer ties with China as a counterbalance. It's true that Ishiba's first meeting with Trump earlier this month went unexpectedly well, with Ishiba offering to buy more American natural gas and pledging to boost Japan's investment in the US to $1 trillion, while Trump reaffirmed the US commitment to defend Japan and promote a free and open Indo-Pacific. However, that doesn't mean that Japan won't get caught up in Trump's brewing trade war. While it's avoided targeted tariffs so far, Japan's been hit by Trump's expanded and increased tariffs on all steel and aluminium imports. To wrap things up though, it's important to note that while things related to China and Trump are going pretty smoothly so far from Ishiba's perspective, this will not be easy to maintain. Some of the underlying causes of tension, the Senkaku Islands for example, remain unresolved, meaning there's always an opportunity for things to deteriorate. Domestically, Ishiba is not in the strongest position either, at the head of a minority government and with the more hawkish members of his own party uncomfortable or unhappy with his swift rapprochement with China. So this story is definitely one to keep an eye on, but consuming news can be pretty difficult in the current media landscape. We're increasingly being flooded by misleading content, algorithmic feeds that just back up our biases, and reductions in fact-checking efforts. It almost feels like people are intentionally making it harder to get to the truth. One way you can cut through the noise is with Ground News, a website and app on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven, objective way to read the news. Every day, Ground News ingests over 50,000 articles from all over the world. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the source's reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. For example, here's a story about Trump's blanket tariffs on steel and aluminium imports. Right away, you can see that the story had at least 403 outlets reporting on it. 33% lean left, while 17% lean right. Every story also comes with a detailed view of the bias distribution, factuality scores, and even specific ownership information, so you can see how reliable the reporting actually is. You can also swipe through some of the headlines and see that left-leaning outlets tend to frame the tariffs as being a negotiating tool, while right-leaning outlets portray them as being aimed at protectionism and economic revival. But my favourite part has to be their blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are being underreported on one side of the political spectrum or the other. This not only helps you redress your personal news bias by reading stories you might otherwise have missed, but also gives you a better perspective on how the media ecosystem is being manipulated and shifted to fit political objectives. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, cutting through opinion and noise with a feed free from manipulation or algorithms, and I can't recommend it enough. In fact, if you subscribe today, you'll get 40% off their Vantage plan. That's under $5 a month for unlimited access to every incredible Ground News feature. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.